you're here. Glad to see some new faces. Yes, thank you for being here. If you would turn to the Three Refuges, it should be on the front page of the, yes, there we are right there. And would you please stand? We recite this together. I go for refuge to Buddha, my deeply awakened mind, the living source of understanding and compassion, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to Dharma, the path of mindful living, leading to healing, joy, and enlightenment, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the loving and supportive community of practice, realizing harmony, awareness, and liberation, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I am aware that the three jewels are within my heart. I vow to realize them. I vow to understand living beings and their suffering. I vow to cultivate loving kindness and compassion and to practice joy and equanimity. I vow to live simply and sanely, content with few possessions, and to keep my body healthy. I vow to let go of worry and anxiety in order to be light and free. I am aware that I owe so much to my parents, teachers, friends, and all beings. I vow to be worthy of their trust, to practice wholeheartedly, so that understanding and compassion will flower, and I can help living beings be free from their suffering. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. And we bow. Then on the next page is the Heart Sutra. This sutra is recited in every temple worldwide, in all the different languages, with their primary service. We start and begin with the title, and it's sort of melodic, so if you don't know the melody, then don't worry about it. Just, you can say it along with us. The Maha Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. The Bodhisattva of great compassion, from the deep practice of Prajna Paramita, perceived the emptiness of all five skandhas and delivered all beings from their suffering. O Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is emptiness, emptiness form. The same is true of feeling, thought, impulse, and consciousness. O Shariputra, all dharmas are empty. They are not born nor annihilated. They are not defiled nor immaculate. They do not increase nor decrease. So in emptiness, no form, no feeling, no thought, no impulse, no consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind, no realm of sight, no realm of consciousness, no ignorance, nor extinction of ignorance, no old age and death, nor extinction of them, no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cease from suffering, no path to lead out of suffering, no knowledge, no attainment, no realization, for there is nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva holds on to nothing but prajna paramita. Therefore the mind is clear of any delusive hindrance. Without hindrance there is no fear. Away from all perverted views, one reaches final nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future, through faith in prajna paramita, attain to the highest perfect enlightenment. Know then the prajna paramita is the great Dharani, the radiant peerless mantram, the utmost supreme mantram, which is capable of allaying all pain. This is true beyond all doubt. Proclaim now the highest wisdom, the prajna paramita. Gate, gate, para gate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, para gate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, para gate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. The Maha Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. Thank you. You may be seated. The Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra is translated as the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. And volumes have been written about this sutra, but it's all about the fact that all of us, all the time, have inherent, we were born with it, Buddha nature. And as we awaken to that Buddha nature, we then realize that there is actually nothing to attain. We already have possessed within us absolutely everything we need in order to follow the path. It's been quite a week for me. Yesterday we had the memorial service for my father, who passed away at the age of 92. And he and my mother were married for 72 years. I'm 71. So that happened. It was quite an emotional time. Family that I hadn't seen for a long time from out of state, all gathered together to celebrate my father's life. Today is also the Lunar New Year, the year of the rabbit. Today is also the first anniversary of the passing of Thich Nhat Hanh, one of the most influential spiritual leaders of our lifetime.
just a tremendous man, a tremendous Buddhist, definitely an enlightened being, and it's so fortunate that he was in our generation, so we have access to his writings, to his talks, to everything that happened at Plum Village, which is the village he established in the south of France after he was exiled from Vietnam during the Vietnamese War. And so today we're going to be focusing a little bit on Thich Nhat Hanh, and I would like to do some reading to you. This weekend marks the 1-year anniversary of the passing of the Vietnamese Buddhist monk and founder of Engaged Buddhism movement, Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away on January 22nd, 2022 in Vietnam. He was allowed to go back to Vietnam because of his pending death, and he wanted to go home to do that. Affectionately referred to as Thay, T-H-A-Y, by his students, Thich Nhat Hanh is widely considered one of the most important spiritual leaders of our time. In his 95 years, he made a global impact as a teacher, author, and activist. There are many photos of him in his visits to the United States. One of them was marching alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in one of the marches. His simple yet deeply profound teaching led countless people toward a life of mindfulness, joy, and peace, and helped define Buddhism for the modern world. Last week we had a wonderful ceremony accepting 3 students who received the 5 basic trainings, but instead of the original 5 basic precepts that come up in Buddhism, we used Thich Nhat Hanh's modernization, the 5 mindfulness trainings, and they're deeply meaningful. In his book, At Home in the World, published in 2016, Thich Nhat Hanh addressed the idea of his death, writing, "Even when the cloud is not there, it continues as snow or rain. It is impossible for the cloud to die. It can become rain or ice, but it cannot become nothing. There's no beginning and no end. I will never die. There will be a dissolution of this body, but that does not mean my death. I will continue always." I really like that, and it brings me back to a poem that I read in an earlier Dharma talk, and I also read and did a podcast or a blog post on at the White Sands Zen Center website. And I just want to read just a little bit of it. "Do not say I will soon depart, because even today I am still arriving. Look deeply. I arrive in every second to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with wings still fragile, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I will arrive in order to laugh and to cry, in order to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that are alive." And then at the end, He says, please call me by my true name so I can hear all my cries and laughs at once, so that I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names so I can wake up and the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. Now, what he refers to in this particular poem and in most of the things he wrote is the beginning and endless nature of all things and the interconnectedness of all things. In one of his books, he tells the story of Lord Indra's net. Now, it is said that Lord Indra created a net to surround the universes, and at the intersection of each intersection of this net was a jewel, and in each jewel was reflected all the other jewels. Now, I know I've shared this with you before, but we have to return to our 9th grade physics class. How did you all do in 9th grade physics?
I'm in physics right now.
You're still waiting to find out, huh? Okay, okay. Well, yeah, lucky you, I did poorly. Okay, the sciences were not my forte. But there is a major law of physics, and it's a law, that matter can neither be created nor destroyed.
And energy, too.
Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, no matter how much they try to do that in the laboratories. Okay? So, yesterday during this service, I was seated next to my mother in the front row, and it was a Christian service because my family and I grew up in a very fundamental conservative Christian church. And my father had been cremated, and the urn was up front because my mother wanted it there. She did not want it interned before his celebration of life. And I was only about 3 feet away from that urn, and I knew that that urn contained the ashes of my father, that he was still present in those ashes. And even if those ashes will be buried in a plot next to where my mother will be buried as well, okay, but they won't be destroyed. My plan, I've already written this in my will and last wishes, is to be cremated. And even though I'm not sure it's legal, I want my children and the people closest to me to go out on my son's sailboat about 10 miles off the Grand Haven pierhead, and have each of them distribute some of my ashes into Lake Michigan, a place that I've always felt a bond with. Now, that's my physical self. That was my father's physical self. But there is something we call the essence, or the energy that you referred to. It is a deep, abiding energy. And the physicist Schrödinger, some of you might be familiar with him. He's not commonly read today. But he reminded us that there is only one essence that flows within, between, and beyond each one of us, out into the universes. And it is that essence that connects us all before we're born, through our lives, and after we die. Questions? Thoughts?
the last part of that scientific law is that matter and energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but only converted in form.
Exactly.
And that right there is what I think of when, when people talk about reincarnation. I like to refer to it as recycled atoms or recycled energy. That's
Yes.
all anything is made out of.
I think I mentioned, it might have been 2 weeks ago in the Dharma talk, that it was about reincarnation and rebirth, and that the Buddha never ever mentioned reincarnation. That never comes up in any Buddhist teachings, anywhere. But he did talk about rebirth. And that's that interconnected energy that we are attached to, and there is the possibility we can be brought back to this human realm, which is considered to be the most precious realm. Okay, and as Buddhists, we have a mandate returning to this realm. And that is to relieve all sentient beings from their suffering. And we will continue to return again and again and again until all sentient beings have been ferried to the other shore, the shore of enlightenment. And that is our mandate. Now, this is a wonderful book. We used it in our book club. It's Thich Nhat Hanh's book called Living Buddha, Living Christ. And he talks about the parallels between Christianity, actually the words of Jesus, okay, not the whole Bible, but the words of Jesus and the words of the Buddha. And I have one of those very large coffee table books called Jesus and Buddha, the Parallel Sayings, and it goes through all of these verses, and right side by side, the Buddha, who lived some 623 years before Christ came along, okay, the sayings are almost identical. Now, I want to read a section of this book because I think that it is important for our understanding of the juxtaposition between Buddhism and Christianity. In 1947, a Bedouin villager named Muhammad Ali, yes, that was really his name, Muhammad Ali, was digging for hard lime fertilizer under a cliff near the town of Naj Hammadi in Upper Egypt. He struck something underground. Moments later, he unearthed a sealed earthenware jar, 6 feet high, and inside were 13 ancient codices bound in tooled gazelle leather. The collection included an astonishing number of ancient Christian Gospels and other writings, including dialogues, conversation, and visions attributed to Jesus and his disciples. And if any of you grew up in the Catholic tradition, you would understand the Apocrypha. And the Apocrypha are the books of the Bible that are not contained in the King James Version. They're only in the Catholic Bible. One of these was the Gospel of Thomas, which Helmut Koester, professor of New Testament at Harvard University, dates at the year 50 of the Christian era, some 20 years before any of the other New Testament Gospels were written. Others were the Gospel of Philip, the Dialogue of the Savior, the Secret Book of John, and the Apocalypse of Paul, some 52 texts in all. The books apparently were salvaged from the library of the earliest Christian monastery in Egypt after the Archbishop of Alexandria ordered the monks to destroy all books he deemed heretical. That is, Christian sources not endorsed by clerical authorities. The majority of Christian leaders rejected such teachings not only for blasphemy of inviting each disciple to identify with Christ himself, but also for teaching what could prove confusing or destabilizing to many church members. Now, there's another gentleman who wrote a book in 1957. It's called The Story of Saint Isa. And the story of Saint Isa tells about, he had heard about this story, and he traveled to Tibet and to India and to China looking for a monastery that had this story in its archives. He finally found one, and then it took him 2 years to convince the head of the monastery to allow him to look at it. And he had with him, and it was in Tibet, and he had a Tibetan translator with him, and they translated this entire story, and he transposed it. And the story of Saint Isa tells about a young boy at age 13 who traveled east with his father and mother because they feared for his death in the kingdom from which he came. He went there, he studied with the monks, he became a monk, and then at age 30, he returned to his home, just like Thich Nhat Hanh did, where he preached for 3 years and then was crucified on a cross with 2 thieves. Does that remind you of anything? The resurrection story. Now, in the Gospel of Thomas, which we don't have in the King James Version, here's something that Jesus said. Jesus said, "If those who lead you say to you, 'Look, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds of the sky will get there first. If they say it is in the sea, then the fish will get there first. Rather, the kingdom of God is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the children of the living Father." My own translation of that, as well as Thich Nhat Hanh's, is that you will then become the children of the everlasting, ever-being essence, the interconnectedness of all things. I'd like to stop right there. Any thoughts about that? I sat in this church yesterday and listened to the hymns that I grew up with. And my father was also a very creative writer. He had a pseudonym he went under, Dare Harris, which he established at the age of 14. And things he left with us just before he died were still signed Dare Harris. Okay? So I listened to those hymns, and he had written, he was also very musical, would come from a very musical family, and he had written many songs for the church, some of which are still sung in the church today. So it can be very confusing. If you come from a Christian background and then are exposed to the Buddhist teachings. But what I wish to leave with you today is that they are parallel. Some of the words and terms and sayings are very, very different. And if you think in a linear way and say, this is it, this is the only way, okay, then you might miss how Buddhism and Christianity are so closely interrelated. We are all interrelated. There are 0 degrees of separation between each one of you and me and everyone else out there. You see, another thing that Thich Nhat Hanh, because he wants us to know that it's not just the what would be called righteous people that we are part of. I am the mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird which, when spring comes, arrives in time to eat the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear pond, and I am also the grass snake who, approaching in silence, feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks. And I am the arms merchant, selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat, who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. We are part of all things. In walking the Buddhist path, it gives us the opportunity to follow, to understand the Four Noble Truths and follow the Noble Eightfold Path. Because in Buddhism there is no deity, we have to understand that each one of those 8 on the Eightfold Path, right speech, right attention, right concentration, right livelihood, they all begin with the words right, good, or proper. And because there is no deity that we answer to, who becomes the arbiter of what is right, good, or proper?
We do.
The responsibility falls on us, moment by moment, as we journey together on this path. Today I would like to set aside some time for silent meditation. It will begin and end with 3 strikes of the bell receiving 3 sounds. Prepare yourself for meditation. And may we all be diligent and industrious in pursuing the path of mindfulness, love, and compassion toward all beings. Okay, if you would turn to the next page after the Heart Sutra, and we'll stand and recite the Closing Gathas together. For all unskillful action ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thoughts, now I atone for them all. Vast is the robe of compassion, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Buddhist teachings for the benefit of all sentient beings. All beings, one body, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passions, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates without number, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain. Thank you all for being here. It was so nice to have the two of you here. Thank you. We appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Announcements. Does anybody have any announcements?
I have the Dharma bracelets that were made specially for the temple by a community member who runs the More Love Collective.
More Love
I
Collective.
believe.
Yes.
I think each bead has special significance with a color, so she put a lot of thought and care into these. So there's they are $25, and then she is giving half of those proceeds back to the temple. So I will have those each week available. If anybody would like one, or I can be contacted during the week.
Good. Today, he's not able to be with us, but he was up north. He's headed up north. Is Morgan's birthday. He is a Dharma teacher and my partner here at the Zen Center, and so I just want to send out good thoughts for Morgan on his 76th birthday. Yes, wonderful, wonderful man, and we so much deeply appreciate him. All right, thank you for coming. You are dismissed.